And closer to home, a vision for a better America means presenting an authentic and realistic pathway to restoring fiscal discipline to our national government. Since World War II, the federal government has consumed an average of 20% of our economy. As recently as 2007, it was less than that. After runaway federal spending, in the last several years, we've reached nearly 25% of our economy, and left unchecked, our federal government alone, without any new program spending, without even the implementation of Obamacare, will consume 40% of our gross domestic product by the middle of this century. Men and women, we've tried lots of different approaches. We tried Graham-Rudman. We tried the line item veto, authored by our own Dan Coates in his last stint in the Senate. But all of them were dismantled by the courts and rejected. The time has come to enshrine in the Constitution of the United States of America spending limits. It's time for a constitutional amendment limiting federal spending to 20% of this economy. If God can get by on 10%, Uncle Sam ought to be able to get by on 20%. So we have to end the era of runaway spending, deficits, and debt, but fiscal discipline alone is not enough. We need to renew incentive in America, the incentive to build, to achieve, and to excel. Permitting people to enjoy the fruits of their labor, built our cities, conquered our frontiers, and is what made America the most powerful economy in the history of the world. We must return incentive to the American people and to the American economy. You know, I was with the president on a stage a lot like this in Baltimore in early February. We invited him up to our Republican retreat. And I asked him if, like John F. Kennedy and like Ronald Reagan, he would ever support across-the-board tax cuts to get this economy moving again. I had to ask him twice. When he finally got around to answering it, he said, "Mike, I would support across-the-board tax cuts, as long as they weren't across the board." No, these guys have a phobia about tax cuts for the rich. Kind of reminds me of what the governor's old boss story he told one time about a pipe fitter that came up to him in Ohio, and he said, "I hear you've been catching a lot of flack, Governor Reagan, about cutting taxes for the rich." And he says, "Sir, I want you to go ahead and do that because I ain't never been hired by a poor man." To reverse economic decline, we need fiscal discipline in Washington, D.C., fast-acting across-the-board tax relief for working families, small businesses, and family farms. Get government under control, get government out of the way, and America and Indiana will come roaring back. We know it. And lastly, I believe our agenda also has to recognize that our present crisis is not just economic and political, but moral in nature. And somewhere in these times, a realization has dawned on the American people that people in high places, places of commerce and places of political power, have walked away from the traditional notions of an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, and the old-fashioned idea that you ought to treat the other guy the way that you want to be treated. The truth is, we will not revive and restore this nation with public policy alone. It will require public virtue, and that emanates from our institutions outside of government, the family, and institutions of faith, the sanctity of life, and the sanctity of marriage. We must offer the American people a positive agenda that rebuilds and strengthens the fundamental moral foundations of this nation. So if you're taking notes, stay focused. Elect a Republican majority to the Indiana General Assembly and send a majority of Republicans to Capitol Hill, and Indiana will have done its part. And do your part as we talk to our neighbors and friends to articulate a vision for a better Indiana and a better America. This is our moment. Now's the time. It's time for all of us to do all we can to preserve what makes this country great. If you can give more, give. If you can speak, speak. If you can write, write. But now's the time to do all you can. I said earlier that the chairman agreed with me that I don't remember any election that we didn't say was the most important election of our lifetime. But I'm going to tell you from my heart, men and women, I believe this isn't the most important election of our lifetime. I think it might be the most important election in the life of this nation, because we will decide which direction we will go, to the right or to the left. And it will be a decisive turn either way. And that decision will be made in 2010. But as you take to the field in the next 7 months, know this: when you do freedom's work, you do not fight alone. Engraved on the Liberty Bell are words of admonition from an ancient text. It reads, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land and unto all the inhabitants thereof." Translation: when you do freedom's work, you're doing his work. Men and women of the Indiana Republican Party, it's time to fight for what we believe in. It's time to be unafraid and to battle for everything that makes this country great. Let us stand for what has always been the source of American greatness: our faith in God and our freedom. And if we hold that banner high, I believe with all my heart the good and great people of this state will rally to our cause. We will take this State House and this Congress back in 2010, and we will take this country back in 2012. So help us God. Thank you.